Welcome back to Great Day Houston. We are live at the George R. Brown, the site for this weekend's Comicpalooza. If you love a good horror story, the kind that makes you question what's real and what's just in your head, then you'll want to add our next guest to your reading list. New York Times bestselling author Paul Tremblay is known for books that stay with you long after you've turned the last page. His latest novel, Horror Movie, puts a chilling twist on the cursed film genre. Later this summer, he's releasing his first ever middle grade book, Another, for younger readers. New York Times bestselling author Paul Tremblay joined us before his Comicpalooza appearance this weekend. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, let's start with a different type of book, the book of your life. Let's go back to the beginning of that. You were that kid, and I think a lot of us were at that time. You really gravitated toward the sci-fi world because things like Godzilla were so different in TV. It wasn't Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for me, my gateway was, I'm aging myself, but pre-cable TV when I was really young, like 7 or 8. Saturday afternoons had a program called Creature Double Feature that played in the Boston area. So the first movie was always a Godzilla, and that's what drew me in. And the second movie was a horror movie, and those would send me to my room, and I'd be hiding under the blankets and stuffed animals around my head.
But then the other thing was transferring to that psychological thriller, which sometimes can be even more scary because your mind intermingles with it.
Right, I think as I got older, I was really more interested in sort of how the character's going to react to these situations, and and just as a human, like I'm fascinated by how people react to extreme situations and what gets more extreme than a horror story.
Yeah, you weren't a big reader until your 20s. I think for a lot of us too, when you had to read something, it was usually a homework assignment, right? Yeah. So when you choose a book on your own to read for the joy and entertainment of it, that's a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a kid, like I dreamed about being Larry Bird because I grew up in Boston, and that didn't work out. But no, I fell in love with reading. It's kind of hard to explain in my early 20s, but ever since then, so I guess 30 years or no, I read like 80 books a year. That's how I learned how to write, so I have to.
What were some of the early books that you read that you loved?
So Stephen King was the first.
Yeah.
The first book of his I read was The Stand, and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, bought me that for my birthday, and that really opened up not only horror, but just the world of reading.
And what's cool about that is that you've had some of those people that you read and admired as authors to come back and critique your work and love your work as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll never forget. I mean, it remains a top moment in my life that Stephen King tweeted about a head full of ghosts that it scared the living hell out of him.
Yeah.
And he's not he's not easy to scare. I have that memorized. It came out August 19th, 2015.
All right. For you, like there were so many things you could have done in life, but you knew that you loved reading, you knew that you loved writing, but you didn't really go into that in college right away. Instead, you had a master's in mathematics, and you still are today a math teacher in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I'm cosplaying as a math teacher, horror writer. It's the scariest costume you'll see at the convention this weekend. But yeah, I mean, I was into math. I did the math stuff first, and then when I was in grad school and doing the long distance relationship thing with my girlfriend, that's when I, took this weird left turn into reading and horror and all that stuff.
Yeah. All right. As a teacher, you're working around teenagers, and you use the feelings and the angst that teenagers have in your writing.
Oh yeah, I'm like an energy vampire. I steal, I steal all my students' energy. But no, they're wonderful to be around. I know it's terrible. I shouldn't do that. For me, it's a great lesson in like language because the slang changes every 2 or 3 years, and I get to embarrass the kids when I say that's cap or whatever is whatever I shouldn't be saying.
When did you commit to I'm going to sit down and write a book, possibly a novel that can publish for sale one day?
So I'm in a really cool spot where I have contracts and deadlines, so I kind of have to come up with it on demand, but. Usually I just go hunting for an idea, and I'll get a lot of ideas, but the one that I know is going to be a novel is the one that sticks with me for weeks.
Yeah.
Because everyone gets excited when you get an initial idea, but the test for me is, am I still thinking about it 3 weeks, 4 weeks later?
Early on, you're working on a different type of technology, if you will, and you lost everything. And so the pivotal moment was, do I start all over because you worked so hard on it, or do I just throw in the towel?
Yeah, the first short story I tried writing, I was 23 or 24, and it was on a word processor. I don't know if anybody in the crowd even knows what that is, but the screen was the size.
They don't.
The screen was the size of a box top, and I wrote 7 pages and lost it. And I felt like, okay, this is not that I believe in signs necessarily, but like I felt like this was a moment. Do I push through and rewrite it, or is this a sign to give up? And I pushed through and rewrote it, and just
and the rest is history. You've published several books, lots of books, A Head Full of Ghosts, The Beast You Are, Cabin at the End of the World. I interviewed M. Night Shyamalan as well, and so that one becomes the movie, which is kind of an interesting thing because oftentimes if we read a book, we go to the movie and go, that didn't happen in the book, that didn't happen, nope, that didn't happen. But it is an adaptation, if you will, in so many ways. Did you have a hand in that movie?
So other than writing the book, I had no hand in the screenplay.
What did you think when you saw it?
I like the movie. You know, as you mentioned, it's weird. It's almost impossible to be objective because I spent a year and a half writing this book that became a movie. So the story is very fixed in my head. Yeah. So the first 2/3 of the movie lines up very much with the book, and then the last third is quite different.
And then as readers, we will create what the characters look like in our mind, and then you see them in the movie, and sometimes you go, that's them. Yeah. And then other times you go, that's not them, but then you get used to it, right?
Absolutely.
It's the essence of the movie that counts there. Your latest novel, horror movie, speaking of movies, take us through the pages of that.
Wow, so a horror movie the story is told by this gentleman who played sort of a villain slasher character called the Thin Kid in a movie that was attempted to be made in the early 90s, an indie movie, and it never made it to screen because something terrible happened on set. And so the book bounces around between the past when the movie was being made, the present where the character, the Thin Kid, is at a convention like this. He's talking to Hollywood producers, so hopefully it's like a fun thing that talks about how movies get made, and also like all sort of the culture around it, and hopefully it's creepy and disturbing.
All right, Another. Tell us about Another.
Yeah, so I have a middle grade book coming out July 22nd, and it wasn't a planned career pivot. I just happened to have the idea that features a 12-year-old protagonist. So Casey is in 6th grade. He unfortunately was the victim of some cyberbullying, so he's feeling very alone and isolated. And this one day during school vacation, this weird old guy shows up with a burlap sack. He's like, Casey, I have a new friend for you. And he opens it up, and inside is this clay mannequin boy. He's got like no features, but he like sculpts a smile on his face. And the longer the kid stays, the more sort of human-like he appears, and it kind of goes from there.
And it's like the threat of being replaced from his parents, by his parents. All right. At the end of the day, we all love horror. There's something about it, and I think when you understand what that is, I think makes you even a better writer. Why are we so gravitated to it?
I think
even those people who say, I don't like horror films. Yeah, you do.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's funny. I think if you asked every horror fan, they'd give a different reason. I think it was a little bit what I was talking about before. I think so many of us find like weird hope and comfort in seeing other characters go through extreme situations. Yeah. And for me, like as a fan, I connect with the other writer or the filmmakers, like, oh, they feel that way too, and I feel less alone.
Yeah. All right. The first time I interviewed you was over Zoom, and I looked a little different. Which one do you like better, this one or the Zoom?
Oh, this is amazing. Yeah.
This is amazing. Okay, this one, I think I'm going to keep it, everybody. Paul, thank you so much for dropping by. And again, Paul Tremblay's novel, Horror Movie, can be found wherever books are sold. His new middle grade novel, Another, is available for pre-order. To learn more, visit greatdayhouston.com, and we'll connect you. And of course, he'll be out here at Comicpalooza meeting his fans this weekend.